Welcome to Ask the Expert on Contingent Workforce Strategies LinkedIn Group. Got a really cool topic today talking about something that gets debated quite a bit, especially around conference time, because there's a lot of aggressive sales techniques in the market. So the topic today is how do you differentiate yourself in an oversaturated sales environment? And, with the economy kind of being a little bit tougher, people are a little bit more hungry. And we've seen that in the way people are selling, right? And being a lot more aggressive in hopefully getting more deals. But, with that, there's just a lot of noise and it's super saturated. People are working really hard, which is a great thing. But on the other hand, is it effective? And are they differentiating themselves from the rest? So, one of the cool things today is I've got a great guest on the show, Mike Bartels from Randstad, RIS, and he's represents a little bit of the newer generation that's come in over the last 10 years, not the last 30 years like some of us. And really, he's a great dude that I've met and got to know, and he's got a great mindset on how to differentiate yourself in this market from a sales perspective, and actually some insight from a client perspective, talking about who are the best clients that the best vendors actually want to work for as well. So, Mike, it's awesome to meet you and bring you on the show to talk about this really important topic because I think, with too much noise, nothing gets done, trust is not built. And, where we want to get to is a well-oiled machine of bringing in new things, innovation, and the right vendors into your program. So thank you for being on the show today and talking about this topic of how to differentiate yourself in this crazy sales environment we see today.
Yeah, Jeff, thank you for having me on. It was a pleasure getting to know you. Hopefully, we can continue to get to know each other as we move forward. But yeah, just like you, this is a topic near and dear to my heart, and we live it every day. So I'm excited to have a conversation.
So, tell me about your experience in this environment, right? Because there's pressures on every side. There's the program side that just trying to get the job done, see what's new and exciting, get the right vendor mix. And then it's the sales people working for organizations that are putting pressure on them to say, hey, listen, we need to bring in new logos. We need to, grow the existing business. And with that, there's a lot of pressure because deals aren't growing on trees like they used to in the high
Oh,
times of staffing, right? So, what's your experience been like?
I will tell you, it has been very interesting for me personally. I started in 2019, right before COVID, the pandemic. So I had just a little blip of what staffing was before that. Since then, you're exactly right. Deals don't fall on trees. Companies are looking for the next biggest thing, whether that's in a digital marketplace, whether that's a more enhanced strategic vision of their contingent pool. So it's been vastly different, even evolving throughout the last 5 years. So yes, there's a lot of pressure to perform. There's a lot of expectations from your vendors, but you as a salesperson is how do you manage those expectations? What's the right thing to say? When is it the wrong thing to say? And how do you eventually build trust to where it makes sense to move forward?
Yeah, and I think we're going to say that word a lot, right? Trust. How do
We
you build
might.
trust? And trust is built by building relationships, right?
That's
And in an oversaturated sales environment, when there's hundreds of people calling client program leads, etc., that have limited time because they're trying to do their job day to day, how do they pick who of the 150 emails or the voicemails, who do they pick to talk to, right? And
right.
so, how have you found Um, from your experience, how have you found it? Some good practices? How have you found it? Some other ways to differentiate yourself from that list when people are really short for time and can really only deal with a few people in a week or a month because they're also doing their day job. So it's an interesting perspective to have. But what are some of the the ways you've seen it or feedback you've got from clients that have picked up your call?
Yeah, well, I'll give you a funny story, Jeff. An aha moment for me. I was at Jose Bank. I was looking for a jacket. Sales rep immediately comes up to me and says, "Can I help?" And my first instinct was to say no, which a lot of our buyers and prospects do at first. Eventually, I realized I'm not sure of my exact size. I have changed since I last bought a suit jacket,
Yeah.
and I needed help. He came around at the right time, told me, "Hey, this is a great color. I think it's going to look good. Do you know your size?" I admittedly said, "No, I don't." Aha moment was he didn't pressure me into anything. His no, he took that as a not right now. He came at the right moment, asked me the right question, and got the business. So, from bringing it back to a sales perspective in our industry, that polite persistence, that consistency in your messaging, building maybe different messages at different times, there you're not going to get a yes after the first conversation. You're not going to get it after the second, maybe the third, but I do think that polite persistence and messaging that is going to separate yourself.
Well, yeah, you call it persistence, but it's really consistency, right?
It is.
Consistency, showing up, trying to
Mhm.
be as polite as possible, offering help when you can. It
Right.
really is that consistency, and that really helps with that trust, right? And
It
bang
does.
on. Like I've seen it over the years that if you continue to show up, the market will reward you, right? And have you can't just not have a good product, but you
Right.
show up, you're there, you're part of the conversation, you're there to help, and then it you did say another thing that was very interesting, it's timing too.
It is.
So from a buyer perspective, if you aren't needing something, always provide some time frames to follow up. And I think then if the person takes that and says, okay, I'll follow up when you asked me to, consistently doing that, or saying, hey, listen, I know you might not need something now, but I'll call you next month, same time, same bat channel, or I'll send you an email with maybe an article or something like that. And then doing what you say, right? That consistency and
That's
then that
yes.
helpful attitude. Um, and then, quite honestly, then it becomes a timing thing, right? And you
It
hope
does.
they'll reach out to you. But in a lot of cases, right time, right place often gets the deal too, right? So, with
It
that,
does.
from a buyer perspective, you got to see your perspective to say, listen, I'm just trying to be there at the right time and I don't want to miss out. And I think
Yeah.
some of that, being honest with your perspective and your intentions, is also very important, right? Like I'm just trying to help, and I'll be very honest with my intentions, and being very transparent probably is different than the 150 phone calls or emails that are just rhyming off the script to say we are an IT staffing company that, does this, this, and this, and we cover national um, requisitions. Like that's
It,
not everybody does that. That's table stakes, right? There's no
yeah.
differentiation in there. But saying you do that, that's the table stakes, cover that. But saying, hey, you can trust me because I'm going to call you next week and I'm going to do it. And you do it, that builds that trust you were talking about.
Exactly so. And I think one of the biggest things you hit on is being able to understand your prospects and their timeline. And when you're speaking to someone for the first time, knowing that timeline is so key, whether it's an RFP, whether it's their timeline for decisions, their fiscal calendar year, you have to know all that. And that also gives you the opportunity to have that reconnect and say, hey, I know it's now a good time. I'll reach back out to you in 6 months. But the difference here is actually make sure you reach out in 6 months.
Yeah.
At the end of every email, I should put, I'll follow up with you Tuesday at 10 o'clock. At Tuesday at 10 o'clock, you can bet you're going to get a phone call from me. And it's those little things, you don't think people notice them, but they do. And next time they read your email, say, I'm not going to answer this now, but Mike's going to call me at 10.
Yeah.
And you just keep building those little pieces, those little nuggets. And that builds trust because you're doing what you say. It's just a little phone call, but you are doing what you say.
Yeah, no, it's so important. The other side of things is also just being unique, right? I think is
Mhm.
something that also can differentiate yourselves in the market, in a saturated market. So, yes, you get what you do, the value you can provide as a company. That consistency probably sets you apart from 80 to 90% of the rest of the market because they aren't
It
doing the
does.
follow-ups when they need to, and that consistency and that polite consistency, right,
Yes.
is key. And understanding what you're being asked to do. But I think differentiation, being unique, is something too. Like what we've seen, some techniques others have used is, you know, jobs in our industry. There's a couple of folks that are posting jobs for our industry, and their name's getting out there. So when they do call, it's different than I'm just trying to sell you staffing services. It's my name is, and they'll be like, oh, you're the guy that posts all those jobs, right? Or let's call it another shtick that is just a little different and a little bit more human. And I think you got to remember there's humans on both sides, right?
Yeah,
So
there are.
salespeople are just like trying to get their numbers and get in there and forgetting that the person is human and just getting an inbox of 150 emails. If you understand that, you'll try to be a little bit more gentle and not as pushy and just script it, right? To be unique. If the buyer starts to understand that, hey, these guys are human too, and they're just trying to do a job, then I think, they're doing the right things by saying, hey, listen, I know you're just trying to do a job, not either looking for something or follow up on this time. Let's build a relationship, right? Because I think a lot of the buyers just brush people off so quickly and they don't understand the value that the vendors can bring to them in their learning individually, but also to their programs, right? And so, striking this balance of trust and being open to other humans, it's not a big wall that you have to protect each other from, right? We're all human and in this together. And I think if there's both sides remember that and understand the annoyances to then understand the things that they're annoyed with buyers, then there will be some middle ground there that you can be human, right? And connect and learn from each other. So it's a really interesting situation that we find ourselves in. Um, so from working with a large staffing firm, uh, like what other scenarios does support you in your mission of selling, right? And
Mhm.
you've seen ways to differentiate. Is it your company supporting you, or is it more you as an individual with a different style that you're finding the best way to differentiate yourself in this market and start to
Sure.
have conversations with clients?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll shamelessly give Randstad a plug. The support the organization provides is phenomenal, second to none. The sales training that they provide is also second to none. So the base that they give you and the knowledge they give you as an entry level sales professional in the staffing industry is phenomenal. But you also have the autonomy to say, I want to do this. I'm going to try it. And they say, well, you have the tools, you have the capability, go try it. And so, from a person in my position, I can look at different customers that we have globally, nationally, and say, oh, I have something similar here in Virginia. let me try that out. Let me do something maybe a little bit different where I can work different workforce structures into an organization. I can look at different pools of individuals and different shifts and say, how do we incorporate this that's working in California, maybe in Virginia? So they give you a nice base, but it's someone, eventually you need to find what your niche is and you need to differentiate yourself, even within the organization. I think that's how you grow overall as a professional. And the more you do that, then your prospects are eventually going to see that as well. So it's twofold there. You definitely need a strong base, but I do believe you also need to look internally of what's your driver, what differentiates you along with the services that your company provides.
Yeah, because it's been interesting over the years. Some of the buyers that I've seen amazing programs, they selected who they want to deal with from the organizations that they've
Mhm.
procured. So, like in the evaluation process, they'd say, listen, it's nice that you bring a bunch of suits to the presentation that I'll never probably see again. But I'm want to know who's on my team that I'm going to deal with day to day because
Yeah,
it's really a you could have great organization behind you, but it's who I'm dealing with day to day that's going to be there when I need them, be responsive to my hiring managers, help us find the right people, etc. Right? So I think you nailed it. It's a balance of both. It's representing a great brand and really getting looking internally and understanding what that brand represents and the processes that are going to help and the products and services that your brand has to help the clients. But it's also building trust as individuals who's going to be there when the client needs it, right? Because, you know,
100%.
you're young and it would be great that
Yeah,
you get a gold watch 25 years from now from Randstad. But the reality of our industry, and especially as we see it today, there's movement, right? And I
there
think
is.
personal brands are so important. So, yes, you're representing a great brand. Then, as a salesperson, that's important because you don't want to represent a crappy brand. You're not going to get any sales, right? And but when you're the other side of it is having a great personal brand is so important because, there
Yes.
will be movement in careers over the years, right?
There 100% will be, but it's also they're buying you.
Yeah.
So it's not the brand or the company that builds that trust. Like, yes, we have a reputation. Um, but you are the one in front of the customer. You're having those initial conversations. You're building a plan alongside them. So while the brand and tools are fantastic, yes, it is up to an individual to work with that customer and build with them. So it does come down to you and
Yeah.
yourself.
Well, and you know, I love this conversation because we got kind of the generational perspectives on this, right?
Hmm.
And I've had lots of vendors and people ask me like, what an incestuous business is it so hard to get in and get into a new program? And it is true because if you've been through the war with people as their ambassadors for programs and you've implemented successful programs, it's just like anything else. You bring the band back together to do the next program, right? So if you've been successful early on in your career and clients remember you and your personal brand, they'll call you back as a trusted resource, right? Because when you think of what we're buying and selling, it's the people that drive the organization's business forward. And so that is a huge responsibility that we often lose in this mix and think of it as spend, think of it as profit and margins and all that sort of stuff. But we're actually helping organizations find the people that are going to move their business forward. So when you think of it in that regard, trust is so important that you're going to be there when you said you're going to be there. You're going to find the people that they you said you're going to find for them, and you commit to it, or you be honest with the people that hey, this role may not be the best for us, or we're having challenges, maybe look elsewhere. And that's where, you know, 20 years later, 30 years later, they call you back because you were honest with them on the programs up front. How are you finding, from your perspective, breaking into this incestuous world that we live in, and then add on the oversaturation? How are you finding breaking in to that world that, yes, you're coming at it from more of a newbie
Yep.
than the old guard?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing is you need to have conviction in your messaging and yourself. So when you first come into the staffing world, you have to accept that you don't know much. It's you really don't, and it's
Yeah,
the honest answer. And I got caught up into why does someone or why does, my leaders, they know all of this, and the leaders of the leaders, they know all of this. I should know because I'm competing with other individuals in other organizations with the same titles. You get caught up in all that. The most helpful thing for me was taking a step back and saying, I have been in this industry long. I don't know everything, but I'm going to do my best to learn. And from a prospect perspective, you saying, I don't know that answer right now, but I can get it to you by the end of the day. That's huge because you're not lying anymore.
yeah,
You're being totally upfront and honest, which makes you a little bit human, but you're also going to come back with the correct answer. And you're not digging yourself a hole. And going back to what makes a good buyer and a good seller is that ability to say, from a seller, to say, no, I can't do that.
yeah,
I think a prospect values that tenfold. If someone comes to me and I honestly can't do it, I'll tell them that I can't. I'll tell them why. But I also have enough resources to where, thankfully, Randstad's huge, so I can give them
yeah. It
to
has sub
Randstad. But
vendors
say,
and friendly,
right,
like vendors they
right.
work with that can help. Yeah,
But if I didn't, I have friends in industries where I can say, hey, don't call this guy or girl. They can certainly help you. I didn't win short term, but I'm not in the short term game. When you first break into this industry, play the long game. You lose a candidate, still call that candidate and congratulate them on a position, how great their new company is, and you wish them well.
yeah,
Do not try to sway them into your direction. Do not try to place them into a new role. That builds trust instantly with that candidate because if that candidate doesn't like their job in 6 months, they're not calling their former recruiter, they're calling you. Same thing
100%.
for selling. Congratulate them on a brand new program. It's exciting. I'm looking forward to all the success and transformation. That's exciting for you. If it doesn't work out, guess who they're calling? Me. Because I
100%.
didn't try to sway them and say you made the wrong decision. If they don't go with you, that's their decision. Like if someone says, hey, you shouldn't be wearing a blue vest and a pink shirt today, I'm gonna be like, well, that was a little insulting, right? But if someone, it's the same thing. Humans
Yeah,
have feelings and they have initial reactions. And the sooner you understand that, it makes selling a lot easier. We don't turn no's into yeses, we turn maybes into
yeah.
yeses. And that's our role here.
Yeah, and it's so true. And you also touched on that. Hey, don't don't lie. Just be honest
No.
and play the
Yep.
long game.
Yeah.
And because buyers see through that very quickly because they
They
see it
do.
a lot, right? A lot is
150 times a
scripted
day.
and just say yes and don't produce. And so what are you going to do, Mike? You're going to say yes and then not produce like the other 25 that just were before you. And so there
Yep.
is a jadedness in the market and the cynicism in the market
There is.
because of that. So you're right. Just being transparent and honest with people
Yeah.
win. And I've always like when I was in the staffing game, um, I would chuckle, but I would say, well, at least I'm the best of the worst.
Yeah.
And be
I mean, you're the
self-deprecating. As a
best.
Canadian, you tend to be, all of our comedians are self-deprecating. And I'd laugh at myself saying that, but it was kind of the truth. At least I was an honest staffing person, right? And
Right.
people took to that, which was interesting. So let's shift gears to buyers you like to work for, right? And or like to communicate with and do the follow-ups because like when you look at the big picture of things, yes, they've got a long list of vendors they can choose from, but you have a long list of clients you can work with. And there is definitely programs that are on blacklists of vendors and nobody wants to touch them. And then it becomes harder to procure the services you want, although the buyers will say, oh no, we can get them anyways. But the best suppliers are in high demand too. And so, what are some of the things that, from your perspective, that you've enjoyed working with certain buyers? You want to do more for them. You want to get a little bit better pricing for them. Like, what are some of the things that a buyer will show, or buyers, some best practices that buyers have worked with you that you've done some of those, hey, I'll get you a deal, um, and worked a little harder for? What are some of the best practices when they are working with you, or you as a prospective salesperson?
Yeah, it's the C word, communication, right? It's from a prospect perspective, it's just let me know a timeline. If a decision is 4 years out, that's fine.
Yeah.
Let me know it's 4 years out. I'm not concerned about that. But I think it's like just let me know, hey, not right now. This is low in our priority list. I hear you. I hear what you're saying. This is why, right? From a client perspective, it's that equal business stature. We don't have to have the same idea and the same viewpoint on every single thing. If that's the case, I get a little concerned because one of us isn't fully engaged in what's actually happening, especially in high volume, right? We need to fully understand everything that's going on. And we're talking about overtime utilization. We're talking about your cost management behind your program, retention, fill rates. We're breaking that all down. And if you're not fully invested in that, it makes it hard to really improve your overall workforce. So, from a client perspective, we're looking at a little give and take. We're looking at open communication, but also that scheduled follow-ups and there's purpose and intention behind those conversations of we can disagree on some things, but at the end of the day, we're always going to meet in the middle and put what's best forth for the program, not just I want this and I want that.
Yeah.
And it's those clients that I say, hey, I think we could do a little bit more for them. Um, and you also get some referrals from it, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, the buyer, so getting back to the humanity of this, right?
hmm
Buyers that get inundated with calls, also, it's like, you know, the pretty girl at the dance that's always getting like a lot of people coming up to them asking to dance. They get a little bit of an ego as
A little
well.
bit.
And then they they want to take more than they give. And so I
hmm
love the idea that you said is communicate and give. So I've seen so many great buyers that take a step back, get over the hump of, hey, I'm so important because I run $100 million program and I have 100 vendors always calling me and taking me out for lunch and dinners and fancy stuff, right? And you can get caught up in that.
Yeah.
But the best programs I've seen is the ones that give back and they
hmm
talk and communicate to the supply
Yeah.
group. If they're getting 150 emails, they actually almost have an auto response that says, "Hey, we're not looking right now," because they personally can't get to all 150 suppliers,
Right.
but at least they're communicating, like you said, giving, "Hey, here's the timelines. We're not looking right now. We may go to an RFP in 2 years. Currently, our supply chain is busy and we don't have as much volume as we used to." So, like, just having that auto response or a tagline in your signature is communicating a little bit more than just the black box that often a lot of salespeople find themselves in, just sending emails or making phone calls and never hearing back. And that becomes frustrating, right? Then, from a program perspective, once they have made the selection, being very open, like, Here's you're our partner, um, versus the oh no, don't talk to our managers, don't only talk to the MSP, and thou shalt only talk to the MSP, and we'll rap you on the knuckles if you're not if you talk and try to build a relationship through it. Like it's interesting the different ways that programs are build relationships. But the best ones you bang on. They communicate, they're open, transparent, and they really truly see you as partners, right?
Here's the thing, though, you have to earn that
Yeah.
as a supplier. They're not just because you won a new logo organization, it doesn't mean that you instantly just get the trust with the snap of a finger. That's earned over time. So even in a program where you're not supposed to communicate locally and everything goes through an MSP, you prove yourself to that MSP. It might be a little more give, right? You explain your intentions of, I need to speak with a local manager because blank.
Yeah.
Um, you have to still build that through performance. And I think that sometimes we miss that. If we
Yeah.
want a deal, perfect. As a sales individual, I did what I'm supposed to do. I got it, ink on paper. It's dried ink on paper.
Yeah.
So my job here is done. Your job just started.
Correct.
You don't you don't want to lose that client in a year or 2 years because your manager is going to come up to you and say, "What happened?"
Well,
And
and
clients are
revenue,
scarce.
like revenue only happens when you've made a match, right? And
Yep.
there is a person in a role and there's an invoice going for that worker's services, right? And
Yeah,
so just winning a deal and getting on the list is a lot of work for
it
sure
is.
to get to that level. But then the real work starts, like you say, that's your ticket to hunt. And then
Hmm.
having people making the matches, making sure you're fulfilling on what you said you were going to do is where
Yes.
the revenue comes in and everybody's happy. The company's got the people to move their business forward, and you're getting
Mhm.
some of the margin and commission from and
And
revenue.
that work starts even beforehand, going back to our emails and follow-ups and consistency. If you do that all along, even in your prospecting, that shouldn't be an issue once
Yeah.
you land a new client, because that's you at that point.
100%. And I think that partnership goes both ways. Um,
It does.
so as a vendor, providing the value, so thinking of ways to, if you're seeing things in certain programs that are working really well, not just for you to win more business, but for the company sharing those ideas with your other programs that you've just won so that they can get more efficient in the programs, they can find people better. Providing that value over and above just a body is
Yeah.
important. And the relationship building, like it's two-way street. I can only provide your body if you give me access and you're giving me access to information, understanding cultural fits, these things like that are so important to making proper matches. And so I think it's a two-way street of providing value. Buyers need to provide value to the vendors to help them help you, and then vice versa as a vendor. If you keep your eyes open and you can provide value to the buyers, outside of just a body, I think
Right.
you really that's where success and innovation happens and openness happens around that. So that's pretty cool. So, you know, we're coming up on time here. It's a fun conversation because just the conversation itself, you can see there's a differentiation in thought, right? It's not just writing a script and then following it. It's, think about the value you can provide either personally or your company is a little different, got things that are different to build the trust, to be a little different than the 150 emails and phone calls that the buyers is got. And then vice versa, the buyers need to start to think how they can differentiate themselves as well. Because if you really want the best suppliers and the best people from the best suppliers to work on your programs, you got to smarten up too and do the right things. So with time up, I always say, what are some of the nuggets? And we've had a lot of nuggets and gold. Trust is kind of the pillar that you're trying to build, right? the top two or three things that from the conversation and or things that you could, your counterparts in the industry around the sales side of things, what are some of the key nuggets of gold to differentiate yourself in this oversaturated sales environment?
So the biggest thing that I truly believe in is conviction over perfection.
Yeah.
You need to believe in your messaging, believe in your strategy. The perfect plan, I'm sorry, it doesn't exist. Plans change, they fluctuate. People leave organizations. You need a pivot. If someone leaves an organization and someone comes in from a different organization, has a relationship with a different staffing agency, they're going to bring that staffing agency
Yeah.
in and you're going to lose, right? Hopefully you don't lose.
No,
But
but
if
it's
you're
true.
have a
Yeah.
strong, yeah, it is, right? But if you have that conviction behind your messaging and you really truly believe what you can provide, we're not selling, what you can provide as a vendor, that's when you transform yourself from being a salesman to a consultant. The second thing is what's your value proposition for yourself? Someone comes to you, why are you different? What makes you different? We're not selling quality at that point. Everybody has the best people, everybody has the fastest service,
Yeah.
yada, yada, yada. Actually, and there's not one right answer, but for individuals in a sales role, actually sit down and think, what does my competition say? Or if I were to say this to my enemy, what would I tell them to say? Thinking the opposites. It's
Yeah.
true. And you have to think like that now because everybody is creating new staffing firms. Everybody wants to be the next big player. Truly, why should they use you?
Yeah.
And if your answer is, I provide the same services that 15 other agencies, well, let's think of how you can transform that. There's ways to do it, but I'm not going to say what I say,
Yeah. No, for
but
sure.
but
And just
100,
being
those are the two
human.
biggest things.
Yeah. And I think we've went through a bunch of that, but that knowing your differentiator personally and your company's key value props or understanding some of the
Hmm.
new things that are over and above the table stakes is what the buyers want to identify
They
as
do.
something that's different than everyone else that's just called. So you
Right.
don't really have to worry about the script. You can say, hey, we're a
Nope.
staffing company, da 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 da. Get over that really quick because that's table stakes,
Hmm.
and then talk about your differentiation, right? Either the
And I
company or
think
yourself.
that exactly. And the recognition that prospects do get inundated with voicemails, if they even check voicemails anymore, I'm not too sure. But also emails too. Hundreds of them daily.
Yeah,
Daily. So if you do 100 emails a day, Monday through Friday, that's 500 emails. So you have to
correct.
think what really is, how do you get an answer from them?
Yeah,
And could be in-person networking, but you're not selling when you're in-person networking at a conference. That's your personal connection, that's your trust. So I
correct.
think there's a key differentiation there of play the long game. You're not going to get a yes the first 30 seconds. If you do get a yes, it's to meet you,
Yeah,
not giving you
that's
job
it.
orders. And once you realize that, your job becomes a little easier. You're not as stressed to go win new logos because you have a process. You understand it's a long game. The sales cycle has increased. It just has because people are signing more contracts that have a length of time attached to it.
Yes.
You need to understand that. And once you fully incorporate yourself into that model, it becomes a little bit easier and a little bit more clear, I'll say.
Yeah. And it becomes, hey, you know that these aren't gonna, it's a long game, like you said, and they're not going to produce fruit immediately.
No.
So continue on, be consistent with the prospects you've talked to, but move on and talk to some more people or get referred into
Yeah,
other prospects because the wider your net, then when they do come to fruition with an RFP or hey, we're switching out our vendors, etc., um, then it goes back to that timing, right?
it does. And the
And I think
best piece
that's
of
another
advice I got,
nugget of gold is that timing. So, you
it
know,
is.
I hate to cut this off, and I think we could talk about sales
No,
techniques all day
we
and
could.
how to
We could.
differentiate yourself. But Mike, I really love your perspective and your professionalism, and so thank you for coming on and talking about this topic because it's so important at this point in time to remember that we're all human in this market on both sides and start to think that way. And I think you'll have more success on the sales side, and as a buyer, you'll be more of a buyer of choice, being able to get access to the best people, right?
Yeah, that's it. We're all human in it. And once you humanize it, just have a conversation with them. Doesn't have to be a yes or no.
You got it. Well, thanks again. So I know we'll probably talk again in the
I'm
future. So
sure.
thanks again for being on the show.
No, Jeff, thanks so much, sir. Enjoyed it.
I don't know how.